is Lesotho, home to one of the top off-road events on the international calendar. An event where man tackles not only the impossible and impossible, but more often than not, the harshest elements experienced in off-road racing. Would this year's fine weather hold out, or would icy snow and rain descend to put competitors through 3 days of grueling punishment? The Lesotho Sun is proud to be associated with one of the world's greatest events for 26 years, the Roof of Africa Rally. The 1992 Mnet Lesotho Sun Roof of Africa Rally was round 7 of the total GTE Off-Road Championship. With the rally the second to last event of the year, most competitors were at a crucial stage in the championship stakes. For some, this would clinch national championships. For others, the agony would be drawn out, ensuring they have no option but to go through to the final event of the season with the championship issue still undecided. As is usual before a national championship event, competitors' machines have to undergo very rigorous pre-race scrutineering. Everything is checked, including first aid kits. Last-minute prepping of cars and motorcycles is the norm prior to any off-road event. And in the case of a long race like the Mnet Lesotho Sun Roof of Africa Rally, preparation is twice as meticulous. Going into the Mnet Lesotho Sun Roof of Africa Rally, the top 4 in the class were within points of each other. A good result would be a deciding factor in the championship stakes. Each driver was counting on gaining maximum points. Championship leaders Klaus Degnar and Jeff Bell have yet to win the prestige Mnet Lesotho Sun Roof of Africa Rally, and were hoping to break the drought by crossing the finish line first in the BP Chenoweth. There's not much punishment these space frames can't take. A careful driver is the driver who makes it to the checkered flag in one piece. With a healthy lead over the opposition, Alfred van Vuuren and Piet Pelser would be fairly relaxed in their Sasol Toyota Hilux. For the next 2 teams, a good result would help restore lost pride. Van Vuuren and Pelser have won their class with monotonous regularity this year. Consistency, reliability and good preparation is the Free State team's recipe for success. The beauty of off-road racing is its unpredictability, and the pair was to be cruelly reminded of this later on in the event. Among the production vehicles, competition was bound to be tough. Despite Wilfried Westlau and Dagmar Blankner's lead in the championship, youngsters Craig Hopkinson and Martin Spencer were capable of another good finish after coming home in the top 10 in the Mabatu Sun 500. The Lesotho locals, Westlau and Blankner, are former national champions and are known for maintaining a consistent pace. This is their final season in the faithful but aging Astoria Brett Van Beetle. The pair are hoping to finish off the season with a dash of glory. As one of the few female competitors in the Roof, finishing well was especially important to Dagmar. On the bike front, 200cc class championship leader Brian Bontekoning was faced with a long haul on the Lesotho Office Equipment Kawasaki. The class is competitive, with everyone snapping at Bontekoning's heels. Although the smaller capacity machines have a weight advantage in that they're far lighter and more maneuverable than the bigger machines, they lack the power of the larger motorcycles. They cannot match the bigger bikes for sheer speed. Mind you, Bontekoning isn't exactly knitting here, is he? Among the 250 class, Lesotho rider Patrick Andrews had a good lead over the rest of the category. The finish within the top 3 at the Mnet Lesotho Sun Roof of Africa Rally was what he needed to stay ahead of Alfie Cox in the championship. Although making his 6th appearance in the race, victory on home turf has always eluded Andrews. This year he was determined to take the winner's laurels, and never before had a rider and the Lesotho Office Equipment Kawasaki been better prepared. Leading the 500 class category was Errol Dalton on another Lesotho Office Equipment Kawasaki entry. Only 11 points separated him from second place Hilton Hayward on the Cable-Lock Super Tyres KTM, and the pair are old rivals. The big 500 bikes have the torque and power necessary to handle the toughest conditions. After a couple of hours in the saddle in rally conditions, the big bangers are a real handful. Riders like Dalton have to be super fit and in top shape. Day one of the Mnet Lesotho Sun Roof of Africa rally follows a traditional format. First, there's the parade downtown, followed by the exciting and spectacular IGI Round the Houses racing section. The streets of Maseru are closed off and spectators flock to grab the best vantage points to watch some serious action. For the people of Maseru and surrounding areas, the annual Round the Houses thrash is one of the highlights of the year. For the competitors, the parade offers the opportunity to indulge in a little fun. For the likes of Patrick Andrews, the serious business of racing is just around the corner. The IGI Round the Houses races are split into various classes. The Round the Houses action is followed by a 56-kilometer time trial to determine the start positions for the first of two racing sections over the next 2 days. This is the sort of action the IGI Round the Houses fans love. The Shillingthorne Motortech Raceco has the BP Chenoweth of Degner and Bell alongside, with a monster Isuzu of Linton Draper and Mike Pretorius hard on Degner's tail. Too hard, we discover later. Competitors have to complete 3 laps of the Around the Houses circuit, which features tar and dirt sections. It did not take long for Linton Draper and Mike Pretorius to stamp their authority on proceedings in the awesome Isuzu. Richard Schilling looking for his third Mnet Lesotho Sun win in a row, and Ashley Thorne were content to hold on to second place. Niels Eriksson and Johnny Walker in the Super Beetle were shadowing them, with Klaus Degnar and Jeff Bell hampered by a gearbox problem. For Draper and Pretorius, it was a high-speed drive in the park in a high-tech vehicle imported from the world of off-road racing in the United States. Schilling is a highly experienced driver who has the ability to pace himself over long events. And this year he was going for the hat-trick. Struggling with a loose gear lever, Degner and Bell decided on a short stop to sort out the problem before rejoining the fray. The Isuzu had a comfortable lead at the checkered flag, followed by Schilling and his Lesotho navigator Ashley Thorne in the Motortech entry. Klaus Degnar and Jeff Bell made a fine recovery after their unscheduled stop to fight back to third place. The second category off was led by 2 Class 9 entries. One of them was Robert Walk in the Superpave Raceco, who forced our cameraman into executing some nifty footwork. Veteran Harry Roscoe in the Protea Playing Card Raceco set the overall fastest time in last year's Around the Houses. Chasing Roscoe were Richard Carolyn in the Lubrication Equipment Stealth Bomber, followed by the Astoria Bakery bread van. History repeated itself with Roscoe again setting the quickest time. Walk made up a lot of ground to come home in second place. There was early drama for Oakwood Carolyn. He picked up a puncture and cruised around to complete his 3 laps. With the high-tech space frame runners out of the way, it was time for the Bucky Brigade to continue with the entertainment. Leading the fray were Springbok's Cassie Gutsia and Richard Leake in the turbocharged Toyota Hilux. Racecam provides a brief sample of what life is like in the cockpit of an off-road racer. There is a tremendous rivalry between the Bucky Brigade and the space frame drivers. The 4-wheel drive Bucky clan love wet and muddy conditions, with Lesotho's notoriously fickle weather looking ominously clear. More than a few truck drivers were performing rain dances on the quiet. One entry which this year created something of a stir was the Carrera Motors Porsche 911 of Franz Stangl and Stanley Illman. There were plenty of experts willing to wager the Porsche entered in the category for standard cars would not stand up to the rigors of an event as rugged as the Mnet Lesotho Sun Roof of Africa. Stengel and Illman were enjoying themselves hugely, with the Porsche picking up some additional decoration along the way. The car was rebuilt for the London to Cape Town Vintage Rally, but when that was cancelled, Stengel and Illman decided to go off-roading. An early boost for Harry Roscoe, who just pipped the Draper Pretorius Isuzu. Third place went to the Gutsia Leake combination. There was no snoozing among the motorcyclists when it came to their turn for a slice of the action. Although there were over 70 motorcycle entries on this year's start line, Only about half that number were expected to finish an event that over 26 years has built up a mystique of its own among those who revel in the challenge provided by racing in the Lesotho Mountains. Among the entries this year were 3 overseas competitors, with Americans Jimmy Lewis and David Rhodes and Joachim Hedendal from Sweden starting out on a journey into the unknown. It was the first time the Americans and Hedendal had tackled a motorcycle rally, but they were quickly up among the leaders in the Round the Houses pipe opener. There were also 2 entries from intrepid quad racers Vickers van Deventer and Billy Kutsia. Riding quad races is an art in itself. It requires a huge amount of skill, stamina and sheer guts. Over the years, the IGI Round the Houses section of the Mnet Lesotho Sun Roof of Africa has become an integral part of the event. Crowds and competitors love it, and it creates a superb atmosphere. It's obvious his boy's doing well. There was an exciting finish with Yuri Himan just beating Natal's Richard Manning to the checkered flag. Disappointed Manning was followed by championship leader Brian Bontekoning on the Kawasaki. The 250 class dominated the top 5 in the IGI Round the Houses, with Jeremy Davies leading home Alfie Cox, while Dalton was the first on the 500s. Tactics always play a major role in an event of this nature. 2-time winner Richard Schilling had his strategy mapped out.
The plan? To race this race as I'd race a normal race. Look after the car. Hopefully by tomorrow night have a pretty nice lead so that on Saturday we can take it easy and look after the car.
For Schilling's former navigator Rob Walk, winning the Mnet Lesotho Sun Roof of Africa rally in the driver's seat of his own car has always been an ambition.
My strategy is to follow people who know the route, like e.g. Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne. But you know, it all depends on what he does. If he's faster than me, obviously I won't keep up with him, but if he's slower than me, I must also go ahead. So I would like to say that if we've got the same pace, we've got it's going to be a race of note.
The Porsche team had its sights set on winning Class 1 for standard vehicles.
We're racing this car in this event because this car was built actually for a race from London to Cape Town, which was cancelled. We had nothing else to do with the car in the meantime, so we thought we'd try it on the Roof of Africa and see how we go. It's a Porsche, it's a 1970 model, which was a classic car. It's in a rally trim, and we hope that it does very, very well in the race.
Off-road races are a competitive lot, and some bumping and boring at the start of the IGI Round the Houses led to a lively discussion between old rivals Klaus Degenach and Linton Draper as the crews lined up to set off on the 56-kilometer time trial.
What was it for?
Man, it was changing gears in this
I was changing. I had no problem
changing gears, man. Yeah, Klaus, you come here to race. Not to nut.
Once behind the wheel of the Isuzu, Draper undergoes a complete change of character. For Richard Schilling, having Ashley Thorne alongside him in the navigator's seat was a boost. Thorne lives in Lesotho and knows the conditions backwards. Behind them, the Rapsa race go of Nardus Alberts and Piet Mathieu was going well. Robin Yates drove the car to a roof victory in 1989, and he still has what it takes to stay with the front runners. For the bikers, the Mnet Lesotho Sun Roof of Africa is a test of mental and physical stamina. Springbok Alfie Cox has plenty of overseas experience and was looking for his 5th win in Lesotho.
Most of the people have been here before, South African riders, so we're sort of familiar with the places we are going to. Not as much as Patrick Andrews. I mean, it is his hometown, but we can't take the race away from where he lives, you know. So he's going to be the guy to maybe stay with because he'll know where he's going and then maybe make your break coming home.
What does Swede Joachim Hedendal think of the Lesotho Sun Mnet Roof of Africa rally?
I hope this race is going to be nice for me. I think it's long, but yeah, I just go for it, see what's happening. Other things, it's tough. I see the videotapes in the weekend, so I don't know, just go for it.
For another former winner, Willie Island, tactics are simple.
There's no strategy, you must just go. Just go as fast as you can, for as long as you can.
Willie was quick to follow his own advice and was flying on the Super Tyres Suzuki. Behind him, Springbok Jeremy Davies was intent on closing the gap on the Truck Africa KTM. Davies had victory in the bag last year, but threw it all away by taking the wrong route with the finish line almost in sight. The ever-persistent Elfie Cox hails from Pietermaritzburg and was determined to take that 5th win on the lubrication equipment Kawasaki. So, how rugged is the M-Net Lesotho Sunroof of Africa Rally? Is it as tough as it's made out to be? After a couple of days of that sort of treatment, the body starts to feel the strain. Life was also bordering on the tough side for the Suzuki Quad Racing team. Although Wikus van Deventer and Billy Coetzee were running with the cars for this event, the quad fuel capacity is the same as the motorcycles. That meant numerous fuel stops for both of them. The M-Net Lesotho Sunroof of Africa also provides the local kids with an annual excuse to bunk school. Harold Dalton also has overseas experience and was holding a steady pace on the Lesotho office equipment Kawasaki. Also making it look so easy was Hilton Hayward on the cable lock Super Tyres KTM. Back among the cars, and Schilling and Thorne were starting to take control in the Motortech Raceco. The Raceco is also a high-tech import from the United States and is powered by a 3-litre Porsche motor developing around 300 horsepower. Looking equally comfortable were Linton Draper and Mike Pretorius in the Isuzu, later to be slowed down via a puncture. A sneak attack from Arlington Estelle Materia in the Meyerton Toyota Raceco almost caught the Isuzu unawares, and Draper stepped up the pace in a hurry. There was nothing sneaky about Klaus Degnar's approach. He and Jeff Bell seemed intent on breaking the land speed record in the BP Chenoweth. Either that, or they were attempting a liftoff. Ahead of the Chenoweth, the Matthias Raceco had come to a halt with a puncture. Still leaves the changing wheels to hubby Arnold. A pattern for the event was already starting to emerge, with Schilling and Thorne taking early control. They were followed by the single-seaters of Roscoe and Walk. The two-wheel gladiators were still hanging on the cables, as they say in off-road circles. Willie Island was still sticking to his game plan, with Jeremy Davies and Elfie Cox doing the chasing. We get a closer look at the action via the race cam mounted on Davies' helmet. American Jimmy Lewis served notice on the locals by grabbing pole position for the first racing section. Next up were Elfie Cox and Jeremy Davies. After a racing section, there is always hectic activity with minor and major repairs needed to machinery before bikes and cars are impounded for the night. Everyone pitches in to lend a hand. Some teams had more work than others, like Piet Putter and Paris Le Cap veteran Tony Selvich, who rolled on the time trial.
Ons het 'n goeie reis gehad vandag. Het was baie rof geweest, soos die roef maar altyd is. Op die laaste seksie omtrent so 10 kilos van die eindpunt af was daar 'n 6 kilometer pad wat ons die pad moes gevolg het. Toe ons net goed op spoed was daar 'n blinde hoogte geweest. Toe ons oor die hoogte kom, en die pad net eenvoudig voor ons gepad. Ons het oor die bult gery. Pad verlaat, daar was 'n diep donga geweest. Ons het in die donga aangegaan. Bakkie het gerol. Ons was gelukkig geweest. Hy het oorgerol tot weer op sy wiele. Ons het net die bakkie weer gestart eenvoudig en ons het net verder gery. Ons is eintlik baie gelukkig. Daar's min skade aan die bakkie, is net die dak geweest en geen beserings of niks van aard nie. Ons sien uit daarna ons gaan môre verder ry en ons hoop ons die roef nog klaar maak.
There were no major casualties in the two-wheeled camp. Minor repairs, the washing down of machines, and what appeared to be a general feeling of well-being pervaded the motorcycle pits.
Good fun.
What you got ahead now?
Good afternoon.
But didn't slow me down much.
We spoke to some of the riders.
I've talked to some of the Americans who've come over here in the past. I've talked to Malcolm Smith and Kevin Hines, and they just said it was like one of the toughest events they've ever done, especially Kevin, because he rode here during the 1988 round, I guess, which they had the problems with the snow and, you know, all the different weather seasons in one day. So I've heard quite a little bit about it.
I hope this thing runs. I've never done anything like this before, so it's a new experience for me, and I thought I'd try it. I like to ride a lot of different events like this, and just real interesting, meet the different people, and real excited about the ride.
Day 2 in the curse of off-road races, the early morning start. Ahead of them, crews at 450 hard kilometers through some of the most rugged race territory anywhere in the world. The weather has traditionally played a major role in the outcome of the Mnet Lesotho Sunroof of Africa rally. There is nothing more punishing for race crews than Lesotho underwater. With river crossings part and parcel of this rugged event, rain can make or break the race for dozens of drivers and riders. Early leaders Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne were intent on slowly grinding the opposition into the ground. Schilling won last year's event by less than 2 minutes and was not keen to find himself in a similar position this time around. The game plan was for the Mototech pair to go out and build up as big a lead as was possible.
Not really anticipating any mud. And my local nav, Ashley Thorne, he says we'll be okay today, so put my trust in him.
For the single-seater drivers like Harry Roscoe, having to do your own navigating is an added complication. The single-seaters rely to a great extent on route marking carried out by the organisers prior to the event.
No, today's the day of survival, tomorrow's the day of racing. Well, yesterday was a day for racing, today's the day for taking it easy.
The likes of Robert Walk, also in a Class 9 single-seater, and Roscoe have a simple method of trying to ease the navigation problem. The plan is to slot in behind a driver who does have a navigator. After their problems on the round the houses and time trial, Klaus Degnar and Jeff Bell replaced the gearbox on the BP Chenoweth. Degnar is one of the most aggressive drivers in off-road, but before turning to racing relied on horsepower of a different kind as one of South Africa's top show jumpers. At the head of the field, the Schilling-Thorne game plan was working. Still second, Harry Roscoe was pushing hard in the Protea playing card race car and was gradually closing in on the leaders. One of the fastest men in off-road, Roscoe was not about to let Schilling and Thorn have matters all their own way. The intrepid Vickers van Deventer and Billy Coetzee quickly won the hearts of Roof followers. The pair were in a sort of catch-22 situation. Because it is an experimental class, neither would be classified in the official results. But this did not deter the pair from putting up a spirited show, what some people do for fun. Former winners Arpi Reinicke and Lucas Dreyer ran into problems on day one in the Sasol Ford. They started day two among the back markers and were intent on making up time. The Stengel-Illman Porsche was also running strongly. It is enough to make any Johannesburg northern suburbs yuppie wince to see a Porsche tackle terrain like this. By mid-morning, the sun was beaming down on Lesotho. The sweeping hills and the peace and tranquility of the mountains made a gentle picture, which is about to be rudely shattered by the arrival of the motorcycle brigade. First on the road was American rider Jimmy Lewis on the Lesotho office equipment Kawasaki. Lewis was looking comfortable and enjoying his first taste of off-road rallying in Africa. Jason Lewis was a determined Elfie Cox in the lubrication equipment Kawasaki. Third place Jeremy Davies on the Truck Africa KTM was also determined to catch the American. Fourth overall was Willie Island, mounted on the Super Tyre Suzuki and going well. Away from racing, Willie's passion is Harley Davidson's. First in the 200 class was Yuri Himan, who was keeping in touch with the leading bunch on the Pro Honda Kawasaki. It's an interesting sponsor motorcycle combination, but to confuse the issue even further, Himan works for KTM. Also going well in the 200 class was Richard Manning on the Winston Yamaha. Manning made history a couple of seasons ago when he became the first 200 class rider to win the tough Toyota 1000 Desert Race. An interesting tussle was also developing in the 200 class between Darrell Curtis on the Linux Yamaha and championship leader Brian Bontekoning on the Lesotho office equipment Kawasaki. Up ahead, Jimmy Lewis was still looking comfortable. Elfie Cox was shadowing the American. And there are a few riders who know more about the roof tactics than the Natal Springbok. Still third was Jeremy Davies on the Truck Africa KTM. After a heavy bout of gastric flu, Davies was content to pace himself in the early stages. Willie Island was still taking his own advice and going as fast as he could on the Super Tyre Suzuki. Local man Patrick Andrews, who owns a trading store, was also part of the equation in the scrap up front. For Swedish rider Joachim Hedendal on the Ericsson Suzuki, conditions were a far cry from enduro racing in Europe. Errol Dalton was still leading the 500 class charge on the Lesotho office equipment Kawasaki. Manhandling the big Kawa in rough country is no picnic. Behind Dalton was Hilton Hayward on the consistent Cable-Lock Super Tyres KTM. The high-tech KTM is a far cry from Hayward's other interest, the world of vintage. The pace had slowed somewhat for Vickers van Deventer, when the quad Suzuki finally cried enough. There wasn't a tow vehicle in sight, but off-roaders are a resourceful lot. It was the end of the road for Van Deventer, but Schilling and Thorne still had plenty of work ahead. Schilling and Thorne were first into a refuel area where anxious service crew await the arrival of their chargers. They were followed by Robert Walk in the Super Pave Raceco, who made the decision to press on regardless. On an event like the MNet Lesotho Sunroof of Africa Rally, a high priority is placed on safety. A network of medical teams is on constant duty.
Inside the helicopter, we've got all the basic life support facilities, like, you know, to keep an airway, to get a guy's heart going again, to give him some intravenous fluid if he needs some, or painkillers, whatever he needs, you know, splints for fractures, hardboards for back injuries, you know, just to get the guy comfortable so that he can go out to a better centrum if necessary.
In the pits, it all gets to be a little frenetic.
I've got an extension part to it.
About 16 minutes. We broke an accelerator cable about 2 k's back. We just had to operate it by hand.
I give two the hammer, please. Give me the hammer. Get the hammer. Somebody hold the bar. Hold the bar. No fuel. Get a lumpy for the seat. Okay. Push me.
Isn't it amazing how big boys always have little toys? With Harry Roscoe involved in a major accident and out of the running, Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne had built up a comfortable lead in the Motortech Raceco. They had around 20 minutes in hand and were looking good. Robbie Walk was also going well in the Super Pave Raceco and had slotted into second place behind the Motortech car. Flying third were Nardus Elberts and Peter Mathieu in the Rapsa Raceco after a steady run. Springboks Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leake in the turbocharged Toyota Hilux were leading the Class 6s without too much difficulty. Now, the only Suzuki quad left in the race, Billy Coetzee mixing it with the leaders. Class 2 leaders were Wilfred Veslau and Dagmar Blankner in the familiar Astoria Bakery Bread Van Beetle. Some interesting battles were starting to develop in the mountains. Right on the tail of Joe Finch and Blake McKenzie in the Porsche Raceco were the SVM team of Cliff Barker and Mike Redden. A team to watch. Youngsters Craig Hopkinson and Martin Spencer have an excellent track record, one of the best prepared Beetles around. For Wiley Harrington and Bocky Garbe, it was proving to be a trying day. Fuel starvation problems plagued the Toyota Hilux, but they were shouldering on. For the race leaders, it was a clean run. Apart from one puncture, Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne had no problems, and the pair gradually pulled away from the rest of the field. With both Harry Roscoe and Robert Walk out after crashing, Friday's results saw Schilling and Thorne in complete control with a lead of 60 minutes.
We've done a lot better than I'd hoped. we'd wanted a 10-minute gap to be able to do a tyre change and things like that. Very happy.
A waiting game paid off for Alfie Cox. For most of the day, he shadowed Patrick Andrews. Cox then broke away on the lubrication equipment Kawasaki to win the section by a narrow margin. And there to greet her husband was a delighted Mrs. Cox. Cox held the 3-second lead over local favourite Patrick Andrews, with Jeremy Davies in third place after a massive accident over the edge of a cliff.
Yeah, the Roof Africa is not what the roof is. They've left out all the passes. We had one tiny little pass today, otherwise it was just basically on roads, you know, and old bridle trails. You know, I've just been following Patrick Andrews all day.
After racing Section 1, the class positions in the car category looked like this. And in the bike section, they looked like this. It was a day of accidents and controversy, with Harry Roscoe, Willie Island and Robert Hawke all crashing out of the running.
There was a section that you get into an old tar road, the old non-used tar road, and it goes for maybe 10 k's. And all of a sudden, it veers off to where they don't make a new road, and it's an actual cutting, a culvert cutting. Well, when you talk a cutting, I'm talking maybe 10 metre high, and there's no warning whatsoever. And as you leave the tar, there's just a little piece of gravel, and I didn't even see it. There was just no warning. There was nothing I could do. It was just not a reading error or anything, and I just left the road. And that was it. I somersaulted, and I landed on the bottom of the tar road, the new main road.
Jeremy Davies was a shaken man after being hit by a local taxi and tumbled over a cliff 20 kilometres from the finish of the section.
Jeez, I've never thought I'd come so close to dying before. Willie as well.
The city is a dangerous place to race. There are places where it's very difficult to put warnings and so on. People have just got to drive with caution on these things, and that's all we can.
Saturday morning, and a crisp breeze blew through the mountain kingdom. A major talking point was the weather, which so far had stayed clear, with Met Office forecasting rain at the start. Whatever the weather, it was clear the final 350-kilometre racing section would sort out the men from the boys, the winners from the losers. A few thoughts before the day got underway.
Die paai is baie plekke onrybaar. Maar ek gaan net probeer julle. Daar's geen manier vir Schilling kan vang nie. Hy's meer as 'n uur voor ons. Dis 'n geval van ek moet net 'n waiting game speel.
The body is sore. It's going to be a tough duck.
For the villages through which the competitors would speed, it would be a noisy day.
I've just got to finish to win the championship, and that's what's my aim and my aim.
Yeah, I'm a bit sore from yesterday, but I'm sure I'll loosen up by the time I get the passes.
Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne led away the cars, with Alfie Cox first off among the bikes. While Schilling and Thorne held a comfortable lead, Cox was under pressure from Patrick Andrews. Schilling and Thorne took up where they left off the previous day and were soon back in the swing of things. Joe Finch and Blake McKenzie in the ex-Bucks Caroline Porsche Raceco had unobtrusively worked their way through the field and were holding down a steady place in the top 5 in an impressive performance. Wilfred Westlau and Dagmar Blankner had a firm hold on Class 2 in the Astoria Bakery Beetle and were looking good for a top 5 finish. There was another impressive performance from Craig Hopkinson and Martin Spencer in Class 7 with consistency the name of the game. Wiley Harrington and Bocky Gerber had cured the Toyota Hilux's fuel problem, and with Alfred van Vuren and Piet Pelser sidelined had taken over Class 5. Theo Coetzee and Ian Wedderburn were in control in Class 6 in the Chev. Like so many off-road races, there is another side to Theo Coetzee. With the Cassie Coetzee Richard Leake Toyota retiring soon after the start, the SBM team of Cliff Barker and Mike Redden had taken over Class 6. We pick up race cam action. Front of the motorcycle pack, a fascinating duel had developed between Patrick Andrews on the Isuzu Office Equipment Kawasaki and Alfie Cox on the Lubrication Equipment Kawa. Cox is again intent on shadowing Andrews, who knows the Isuzu mountains like the back of his hand. Jeremy Davies did not have much chance of catching Cox and Andrews. For Davies, it was a case of plugging along on the Truck Africa KTM, with his only hope a costly mistake from either Cox or Andrews. Errol Dalton was still in control of the 500 class on the Isuzu Office Equipment Kawasaki. Conditions were treacherous with mistakes easy to come by. Having their own race were American Jimmy Lewis, closely shadowed by Yuri Himan on the 200 Kawasaki. Behind them, the Swede Joachim Hedendal was still going strong and adapting well to foreign conditions. There was also an impressive performance in the 200 class from Winston Yamaha rider Steve Stoffberg. Once again, consistency was paying off. Back among the four-wheelers, Klaus Degnar and Jeff Bell were going like a train in the BP Chenoweth to make up time after a late start. They had little chance of catching Schilling and Thorne, and once again we pick up race cam action. Wilfred Westlau and Dagmar Blankner were still making good progress. For them, it had been a near faultless display. Craig Hopkinson and Martin Spencer could also be satisfied with their work over the 3 days. The sole survivor in Class 9 was the Lubrication Equipment Stealth Bomber in the hands of Richard Carolyn. He was trying to win the roof at the 13th attempt. Cliff Barker and Mike Redden were also going along steadily in the bright yellow SBM and did not appear to have a care in the world. Not having quite as much fun was Billy Coetzee on the Suzuki Quad. The Quad finally cried Finney with the finish line almost in sight.
Al die goede moes gerust. Nou bly die ketting afgooi. Hulle kyk voorheen op af, wanneer hy sê as jy wen, kry jy nie beker nie, slag. Jy kan net jou klas kry.
At the Popple podium, it was no surprise when Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne appeared in the Motortech. For Schilling, it was a moment of triumph as he became the first driver in the history of the event to score a hat-trick of wins. History was also made with Thorne, the first Lesotho driver or navigator to win the roof. Klaus Degnar and Jeff Bell took a well-earned second overall, with Lesotho's Wilfred Westlau and Dagmar Blankner coming home third in the Astoria bread van.
Yeah, fell in a hole. Had a suspension problem. And we had a puncture, but we're okay. We won.
More history was in the making with Patrick Andrews on the home stretch to become the first Lesotho rider to win the event. It was a win tinged with controversy. Second man home Elfie Cox lodged a protest against Andrews based on the Lesotho man having prior knowledge of the route. The protest was dismissed by the stewards, and Cox excluded from the results when it was discovered he had missed 2 marshal checkpoints after taking a wrong turning. In sight of the finish, and for Andrews, the end of a long and weary 3 days. With Cox excluded from the results, Jeremy Davies was elevated to 2nd overall, with visiting Swede Joachim Hedendal a well-deserved 3rd.
Okay, the marshal told us we must turn right on Airways corner and do the time trial in reverse. And then he was slightly ahead of me again, and he just carried on straight, didn't turn right there, so I wasn't going to chase after him.
Let's have a look at the class results in the car category. And the results in the bike category. With 1 event left on the calendar, only 3 points separate Degenaar and Bell's team from 2nd place Wade and Grant Perrins. Schilling is in 3rd position, but the final event of the season could change all. Wilfred Veslau and Dagmar Blankner have a 25-point lead in the production category, but with Hopkinson performing as well as he has, the last event could dramatically change the situation. Commercial category leaders Alfred van Vuren and Piet Pelser have victory in the bag. 2nd place, Wiley Harrington and Johan Gerber would have to win the next event overall to beat them. The tussle for overall honours will be decided at the final race when 500 leader Errol Dalton battles it out with Hilton Hayward. Patrick Andrews has sewn up the 250 class honours, with rival Cox dropping valuable points after this event. Brian Pontekoning is leading the 200 category, with young Yuri Himan lying a healthy 2nd, and another very young and talented rider, Alex Vols Jr., 3rd. Once again, the Mnet, the Lesotho Sun Roof of Africa, lived up to its reputation.